Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I am a freaking fossil. I have realized this for a long time, right? My freaking bald balding has realized this even before I did. But today I kind of want to talk a little bit about the nature of my channel, the history of it a little bit, and just kind of rant a little bit. So if you're interested in hearing me ranting, then stay with me. If you're not interested in hearing me ranting, then why'd you subscribe again? Kind of an odd choice. But anyways, so I recently, the YouTube, when you log into the YouTube, it will occasionally pop up little notifications. And recently, it had the absolute freaking audacity to say at the very top, "Congratulations, your channel's been going for 9 years." And that made me, of course, realize that my channel has been going for 9 years. And that's certainly a thing. Right? And thinking back about everything that has changed in the last 9 years, both in my life as well as with regards to the channel, is absolutely kind of wild. I'm be real with you here. So I figured I'd use this opportunity while I had a couple of, a couple of millivolts in the battery, so to speak, to talk a little bit about what's sort of gone on in my channel's history in my head and where I think things are going. And this isn't like, oh my God, everything's changed. This is just like a retrospective, if you will. And some of you who have followed the channel for a long time might know some of the deep lore. Some of you might not. So, here you go. But apologies if you do. This channel started off, actually, with this knife. This Spyderco Bowie. I'm sorry, Machin Swish Bowie. I still don't speak the Polish. I'm so sorry, Machin. But anyways, this is a great knife. It is one of the better knives out there. It is also heavily discontinued. But at the time, I was getting ready to sell mine because I was robustly, I still am, mind you, but I was robustly an idiot. And I thought, well, I'm living in a place now where there's a 3-inch law, so maybe I should sell it and buy something else. And so I, like an idiot, sold it. And but before I did, I think I knew at some deep down level that I was in fact an idiot. And so I said, why don't I share with some people how much I like the knife before I do? Right, and so I did. I made a video about this, about the Prometheus Wrights Alpha, which is a great pen, absolutely great pen, which I also sold because I am also an idiot. And I just threw it up there on the YouTube, and I thought, you know what, heck, let's give it a try and see if anybody gives a crap. But I really did it in the same sense that you write a review on like Amazon of just like, hey, maybe some human will see this someday and it will be valuable to them, and didn't think much of it. And I thought it was kind of fun, why not, right? And so I made another one and I kind of just went through over the course of a little while and reviewed a couple of things that were in my life. And much to my dismay and shock, somebody watched. And a number of people watched, not like a huge number, right? And it's also worth noting that at the time I was getting started, it was a much smaller pond with, in some ways, much smaller fish. That's not to say, of course, that there were not prominent knife reviewers at the time, right? Epic Snuggle Bunny was one of the big ones. He is also, oh boy, he is retired. Yikes. No, but he's no longer really making content. There were a couple of other folks out there who were doing some knife-related content, but it really wasn't that many people out there doing that, right? So it was, I think, maybe a little easier to gain traction on YouTube, being a knife reviewer. So anyways, I filmed up those videos, and, I found myself on the very dangerous sort of situation of like, well, I guess if I buy something new, I can put up a video. And so early on, in a lot of ways, the channel existed as sort of a pretext for me to buy some new knives. And oh no, terrible, tragic. But anyways, so I did that. And, I tried to do some other creative stuff too, like discussing the difference between, oh, where's my rat too? Of course, here it is. The difference between inexpensive and cheap, right, in terms of pocket knives, which brought the Z Hunter into my life, right, who has become more of a character on my channel than an object. But that's fine. That's a beautiful thing. But, talking about the difference between these two knives, actually these three knives, right, was definitely in some ways it felt a little watershedy for the channel. But so I tried to keep it interesting, tried to mix it up a little bit. But the real next step in the channel came when people started, well, I think people have always been a little bit generous, but when I had a couple of generous viewers really step up and start loaning me gear. One of the best examples of this is my buddy Jim. This is a knife from Ferrum Forge, that is. And the actual model name of it is completely escaping me, and that's bothering me a great deal. I don't believe it to be the crux, but hopefully it will, the right two neurons will that's the sound neurons make, by the way. But anyways, we'll fire in concert, and it will suddenly come into my brain. But my buddy Jim is a huge gear enthusiast, living in a completely different state. I never met the dude, but he started watching some of my videos and said, "Hey, I've got a bunch of EDC gear in my I don't know where he kept his gear. Do you want me to send some along for you to take a look at?" And this was mind-blowing to me, right? And he's not the only person who loaned me gear at an early stage, but he was one of the most generous, right? I would just get USPS, like, medium flat rate boxes full of flashlights and knives and such, including some beautiful Ferrum Forge pieces. And Jim would just loan this guy, and he was really flexible, like, "Yeah, send it back when you're done." Right? And it was an absolutely lovely thing. And in a lot of ways, during those early times where I was sort of in that space, if I had a couple of subscribers, well, not a couple, I had, a decent number of subscribers, but was not at any kind of level of prominence that anybody would consider me to be a destination to send stuff to, right? I was just some jackass, right? And still am just some jackass. But he started loaning me this gear and gave me a bunch of grist for the mill, gave me a bunch of stuff to take a look at. By the way, you can learn from this, right? You can operationalize this. One of the very best ways to support a gear review channel that you're interested in supporting is by loaning them stuff. And I know there's certainly risk in that, right? But at the same time, this can be a huge boon for somebody who is not yet in the, or may never actually get a chance to be, on the mailing list, so to speak, to get free product or to get, pass around stuff. It is a very, very nice thing that you can do. And so if you're sitting there, thinking to yourself like, "Oh, how can I support this new channel? They're great." Well, see if they got a Patreon, because that was a big step for me too. Or see if you can loan them some stuff, right? It can be a lovely thing. And it's, something I've tried to do here and there. But anyways, I digress. My buddy Jim, though, was instrumental, I think, in continuing to let me make stuff, well, not necessarily spending all that much money. Because at the time the channel started, I was comfortable-ish, but I wasn't making very much money doing what I was doing, right? And so as a result, it really did make it possible for me to accelerate the channel at a time when I might have stayed very stagnant, right? And so this particular knife is not only a Ferrum Forge, which is something that I'm very much, I learned of through Jim, but he has a matching knife, just like this one. I was able to do this with the help of the Ferrum Forge folks who are actually in San Diego area. But anyway, so he has a matching knife, so that this knife represents him in my mind. One of the other things that was really helpful early on were really generous patrons, right? And this is not just the Patreon sense, but one of the earliest, I think, patrons of the channel, this guy named Sid, my buddy Sid, you'll also remember, has been incredibly generous throughout the history of this channel, right? He has been not only a good friend, but also just an incredibly kind person, and an incredibly passionate gear collector. And one of the things that he has done is support the channel very much financially, right? In addition to buying some gear off of me, right, he actually is the person who owns the very first Norseman that I ever bought. He kind of wanted that piece of the channel's history, and, well, let me put it this way, he paid me such that I was not at all concerned about selling it, right? And ended up giving me this guy too, and he's just an incredible source. But having somebody who was willing not only to contribute gear, which is a lovely thing, but was willing to directly contribute money, which represents a chunk of his life, his time, right? That was incredibly validating, for lack of a better term. It was motivating, right? And then this was one of the things that led me to think, well, maybe I'll try a Patreon, right? No one's going to ever pay for knife reviews. Come on. But then they did, right? And once I opened that up, it opened up the patron community, which has been an absolutely lovely thing, right? They have been incredibly good at making the channel, well, possible. Right? And especially, as I have sort of kept a model that is not super compatible with influencer marketing. If you want to read my disclaimer, you're going to see why not a lot of brands email me these days. But nonetheless, they made it possible for this to continue. And there was also a beautiful community and also slightly cursed community that formed as a result of this. This is kind of a Thanksgiving video. I'm giving some thanks here. If you want to think about it that way, happy Thanksgiving to those of you celebrate. But anyways, this is the patrons really opened up the space in a lot of ways and made it a lot more possible for me to just pick random things up, right? Where, for instance, okay, good example here, this guy right here is the Benchmade Neurons. Absolutely lovely knife. In some ways, the price is out to lunch and the ergonomics are a little bit weird on the mini size, but boy, does it carry nicely. But it just gives me the opportunity to pick one of these guys up because, well, it seems like something people would care about. You know, that's the kind of thing that the Patreon makes very possible, right? And so in addition to, you know, generous viewers loaning gear or giving money, actually, one other person I want to shout out who's been exceptionally generous, this guy named Mike, my buddy Mike, has sent along a number of things, ranging from the lights that you are seeing above things here. It helped me upgrade my lights at one point in time. But he sent along some really unique pieces, one of which is this little guy right here. This is a, well, as you can tell, this is a pocket watch, but it is a very, very unique and interesting pocket watch, complete with a display back and everything. You can see the movement running here. Just winding it a little bit. It's an absolutely lovely little piece here, and I've been meaning to make a video on it because a lot of people have been asking me for a video on an American-made watch, and here you go. But more importantly, you know, it's an absolutely fascinating piece, and it's one of the things that I've kind of desperately wanted to film, but I am so low battery lately that it's like, I want to do something like this justice. Or this guy, which is a vintage Kabar knife, which is absolutely amazing. It has a great story to it, and I want to do it justice, but I haven't yet had the moment, the energy, the time to do it justice. And so, anyways, there have been generous, and there continue to be generous viewers who merit response, and I'm leaving out a lot of other people who've been incredibly kind throughout the history of the channel. My other buddy Michael, I mean, there have been people who've made a lot of differences here, right? Including, you know, the people in my Patreon community who have been friends, who've been moderators for me, which, you know, luckily the community tends to take care of itself, but some cursed folks slip in there. So I'm going to shout out Con and Nick and Nathan, who've been incredibly generous with their time in that way. But anyways, all of this has made it possible for me to be sort of on my own. But then there's also been companies that have stepped up and started sending gear, right? Kaiser was actually one of the very first companies. Do I have a Kaiser close at hand? Not at the moment, which is actually kind of telling. But anyways, Kaiser was one of the first companies that really started sending stuff. And this was way back in the ancient freaking times. We're talking like 2016, 2017-ish, right? Yeah, thereabouts. And they were the first company that just said, hey, we see you making videos. You want to feature some of our knives? And there was no strings attached, no nothing at all, right? Just like, hey, we can put you on the list. And, you know, that was wonderful at the time. It was amazing. It was shocking. Frankly, oh my God, someone wants to send me knives. And, you know, some of the knives were great. Some of the knives were forgettable. Some of the knives were not so great, right? And I was able to be honest, right? And they just kept sending because they wanted the exposure, I think, more than they cared about, you know, oh God, what's the impact of the, you know, none of the modern influencer metric stuff. It was just like, hey, we send you a knife, you put it on the channel, whatever you say, you say. And that was lovely. And as that happened, you know, more and more companies started to hop on that train and, you know, including some relatively bigger names, right? And you all have seen who's been on my channel before. But, you know, I've had a number of makers who've been willing to send me stuff or in some cases just sell me stuff that I might not be able to get on my own because of wait lists and things like that, or just because I'm not sitting there able to click the button at the exact right moment, right? But that's been a lovely thing. And there have, of course, you know, the makers that I've worked with have been very often wonderful. There's a key there, right? Very often. There have definitely been some makers who've been rather problematic for me, but there have been some, you know, many makers who understand Z Hunter. I know you want to hug the Norseman. Here, let's just let you two can have a moment, right? But anyways, I digress. There have been makers who've been just incredible in that they are completely, they know what I do. They know that I'm going to be honest. And they will take the feedback and someplace in that range between, that's a good point, and wow, you're a jackass. I don't believe that's a correct assertion that you've made there, but whatever. That's part of the deal, right? And if they're willing to accept what I'm saying someplace in that, you know, range, then it's lovely, right? And they can send stuff along and I can be honest. And frankly, if a maker doesn't put me in a place where I feel like I can be honest, then I'm not going to review them. I'm not going to talk about them, right? There are plenty of makers who I don't work with because, you're a little too thin-skinned, I think, for honest reviews. Why don't you go get yourself an influencer? But anyways, not that I'm not an influencer, but I try not to be an influencer. You know what I'm getting at here. But as a result, though, here, we'll break you two up. That's enough. Any longer and it gets weird. I think it was already actually robustly weird. Anyways, I digress. Personification of the Z-Hunter aside. So all of this has been a really, really weird journey. And then what's been really interesting, too, is what's happened lately. What's happened afterwards, right? Because in a lot of ways, I think my channel has peaked. In terms of quality, that seems like a pretty consistent low. But in terms of, viewership, in terms of prominence, in terms of influence, I have peaked, right? And a big part of that is because other channels have far surpassed me, right? Part of this is because I took a new job, and that job is pretty intense, right? It's one of those sort of situations where there are days when I come home after work and I don't have the energy to open my text messages. Let alone to, sit down and film a review. And we're finding, 3 free hours to be able to talk about something, even when that something is incredible, right? Like the Koenig Mini Aries here. This is one of the best knives I've handled. It's predictably perfect at a Koenig, right? I owe this a really, really strong and powerful review, and I just haven't had the effort to sit down and to do that. Right? There's lots of stuff that's awaiting review just for lack of the low battery sound, right? I think, oh, hey, I'll write the review of the Koenig, and then you hear that, and that little tone that your computer plays when you've got 2 minutes left, bro. You better get yourself to an outlet. And so instead, I have to just stay on the couch and plug in the USB-C. I am, by the way, not USB-C powered. I tend to be instead carbohydrate powered. I am a bread powered. You just plug the bread right in. Anyways, I digress. So, but as a result, though, I've just not been posting as much content, and YouTube penalizes people who don't post regularly. It's a problem. Well, I kind of get it from their perspective, right? And there were a number of people who, especially during the pandemic, did things very right? They posted every day or very close to it. They played the shorts game, which YouTube really helped them, and they took off, and good on them. There's no sour grapes here, right? Like Neves, Metal Complex, the folks who've shot way past me in terms of both influence and in terms of viewership, all the good stuff in the world, right? I am so happy for them. And Metal Complex and I have been talking for many years. I am damn near, I don't know that I get to be proud of him, but I really am at some level. He has shot way past me in terms of that. And as a result, a lot of the makers have disappeared. Some of this was very conscious, right? When I reached a point where I realized that I have more things I could review than I have time to review in, I made the choice to become a lot more choosy. The companies who were not regularly putting out amazing stuff, or who had a quality, kind of a low signal-to-noise ratio, if that makes sense, right? Where they release 50 things, and of those in a given year, maybe 2 are worth a damn. Those are the folks that I very often said, actually, I'm backing down. I'm low-key retiring here a little bit. And that was fun. It was very nice. And those are folks that I sent along to other makers, and who I continue to send along to not other makers, to other reviewers, right? Metal Complex, Neves, Tri-State, etc. There are a lot of really great reviewers who do have the time and who are making this, it feels like, their full-time gig. And I think have the power to do that, right? And so for them, that was an easy set. And then there were a group of makers who really just don't, they're not going to bother. Why would I send it to somebody with 160,000 subscribers? And that's been pretty constant for 2 years. So YouTube, that's kind of weird, right? But anyways, they just wouldn't even bother because I'm so far from the top now that it's why would we send to this? Also ran, which is hilarious, right? In some ways, the quality of brands reaching out to me is I'm back down to the place where Kaiser might send me an email. But that's not, and by the way, of course, I want to be clear. There are still brands who are reaching out to me on a regular basis who I really value and whose work I think is good generally, and who, frankly, I know I can can be honest about, so it doesn't cause conflict, right? There are people out there still in that category. Monterey Bay Knives is a maker who is, I value their stuff a lot. They do really good work, but they're willing. Actually, I just got this guy. This is the Winterblade Co. This is their M-Fire, which is a automatic / it's not legally an automatic because it has bias to closure, but talk to your lawyer. But it's a magnet-powered auto, effectively, pocket knife. Really, really weird, but that's because it's a winter blade, and anytime you see winter blade anywhere, it is going to be really weird, right? But, there are still makers who are more than happy to send things along, and it's been lovely, right? But it tends to be a very small group of people whose work I trust, and more importantly, whose attitude I trust, to be able to do this kind of, to be able to stomach an honest review, and to not waste my time. And that's a silly thing to say, but at some level, I kind of feel like when I end up seeing something that is just not reviewable, that has major issues with it, these days it feels like a waste of my time. I would rather be spending my time talking about something really cool and unique. Here's another example of something new, kind of cool and unique. These are some custom scales by RG Custom Machine Works, local guy here in San Diego, but he's created these scales for the Spyderco Para 3 here that are just wildly good. They're beautifully machined. They're at 3 other levels, right? Absolutely transforms the knife in a lot of ways. They're not cheap, by the way. You're looking at a good chunk of change, but at the same time, this is the kind of thing I love featuring. Something that, or like a freaking magnetic automatic knife. Okay, sure, winter blade. Those are the kinds of things I really care more about featuring, instead of, something where it's like, oh yeah, it's a knife. It's fine. It's different, I guess. Maybe. Is it different? I can't tell, right? That's the kind of stuff I don't care about. But anyways, as a result, I've really dialed things back a lot. And, there are still a lot of videos in my mind, right? I have a number of, I was just saying in my Discord here, that's what inspired this video. There's still a number of things in my brain that I kind of want to make videos about, right? Like the death of evergreen products. Right now, I think a lot of people are, kind of focused more on, let's release something new, give it to all the influencers, make it drop on the same day, make a social media splash, sell 200 of them, then abandon that product, and it's gone in 2 months, right? That's a very different world than when I got started, right? Where you could buy a Spyderco Delica, and it's the Delica 4, and they've been selling it for longer than, well, there are some products out there that have been sold longer than I, have been a thing, right? That's definitely a thing. But, these days, that's very different. So I'm going to want to talk about that. I talk about the fact that a lot of people, we've gone from it's really hard to have a production knife made to it's really, really easy to have a production knife made. And now a lot of people are realizing their production knives aren't selling anymore. And part of that's economics, right? But part of that, I think, is, well, what I'm going to talk about in a future video, right? And how do you make a production knife special these days? And the answer is, it turns out, looks like it's really hard. But anyway, so I still have videos in my mind that I kind of want to take a look at. But at the other level, it's just like, it's been a ride, right? Looking back over 9 years, the knife market is an entirely different place than when I started, right? The social media sphere for knives is an entirely different place. And part of me wonders what's next, not necessarily, for me, that's sort of a boring question, right? Who the freaking knows? Probably more low battery signals, but aside from that, maybe better charger, larger bread, I don't know. But more importantly, part of me wonders what's next for knives in the social media world. There are bills going on right now in the UK, for instance, that are going to severely penalize companies if they allow pro-knife content on their platforms, which, I have many things to say about those kinds of laws, none of them particularly good or kind. Maybe it's coming from a place of, it's hard to distinguish fear and genuine desire to help. Anyways, I digress. But like those kinds of regulations could just provide further counterpressure from social media companies towards the knife world generally, right? That could lead to, it's very easy for a company to say, well, actually, heck, if we just ban this kind of content altogether, then we're UK legal to start with, and we don't have to worry about it, rather than having different rules that they enforce in the UK. That could be a thing, right? And if Knife Instagram, if every account that's posted a knife shuts down, that's going to have a major effect on a lot of businesses, on a lot of people, on a lot of livelihoods, right? And I know Instagram doesn't care because, well, Instagram doesn't care, but, Meta doesn't care more broadly. But, like, that's a serious thing if that happens. Or YouTube even, right? Like, for all I know, YouTube has been making all kinds of weird moves lately with regards to weapons. And so, it's very possible that I wake up tomorrow and my channel is just shut down with no recourse because they decided, you know what, actually, we don't want that content. And so in a lot of ways, I actually feel I'm less afraid because in some ways that little bit of separation and that fact that I'm not trying to make this my livelihood feels a little bit safer. But I really don't know what the future holds for knife reviewing YouTube, right? I really don't. And I feel very sort of anxious, frankly, for the new generation of reviewers who are on the rise and who are trying to grind hard, and not the knife-making grind, but the other kind of grind, who are trying to grind really hard and make this their livelihood, make this their career, right? Like, part of me is just terrified for them. Like, the idea of waking up to a knife ban is really frustrating to me as a thought, right? That would really anger me. But I have something to fall back on, right? And I don't have reason to believe that this is going to be a thing. But I also don't have strong reason to believe it won't, if that makes sense, right? The wind, it blows in strange directions. And certainly with these large social media companies, policy is just policy. It happens and there's very little recourse. Right? And particularly if you're not a gigantic channel, and I mean in the millions, you are probably not going to get there. You're not going to get a human to talk to about it even. So, it's a scary thing. I don't mean to fearmonger here, by the way. I really genuinely hope that's not the state of the world, but who knows? It could be, right? But all of this is to say that my role in the knife world is very weird at this stage, right? I know that there are people who still care about what I say, right? It's lovely. I post a new video and people say, oh, it's always great to see a new Nick Shabazz video. I'm like, oh, I know, isn't it? Okay, that sounded really egotistical. That was more a statement of, I know, isn't it nice that I had the energy to? But nonetheless, right? My role in it is continuing to be very strange, right? I will continue to look at some great stuff, right? I've talked about these scales. I've talked about the watches, watches. Talked about all kinds of new stuff that's on the table waiting to check out. Oh, speaking of new stuff, this is the kind of content YouTube won't ban. There's a pen. This is the Herman Knives pen, the Epica. And it is absolutely, epic. Very, very interesting pen. Can't wait to give it, to give it a review and to take the time to really dive deep. But nevertheless, there are a lot of cool things I want to keep doing, but I'm also going to continue keeping it pretty low-key, right? I'm going to continue saying no to most things, right? And the stuff I do choose to pick up is the stuff that I'm going to find most interesting, the makers I really want to support, both as humans and as products, and I'm going to keep trying to do some retrospective work, right? What's different? What's changed? I have 9 years of experience in the knife world. That is very small compared to many people in the knife world. I want to be clear. I'm not claiming to be some elder freaking statesman at this stage. I'm just saying I've been around a little while. And I remember a time before We Knives, right? And before everything that, all of those companies have come to kind of represent in the market has happened. What's different? And maybe providing that perspective might be valuable. And I want to keep talking to people. I want to keep engaging with the community to whatever extent I can. Oftentimes, that's just been the community on Discord via Patreon. But still, that's a lovely thing. And I want to keep, just keeping an eye out there, seeing when there are really cool new things happening. I want to catch that. I want to see that. Partly because I want to see that as a collector, as an enthusiast, and partly because I want to see that for people and to share that. And I want to keep sharing the stuff that brings me joy, right? And even when it's stuff that goes against sort of the grain, right? One of the things that's been bringing me joy lately is this. This is a Citizen watch, but it is a Citizen the Citizen. So this is one of those high accuracy, 0.5 seconds per, 5 seconds per year accuracy sort of quartz watches. It's a lovely piece, right? And it has been shockingly on my wrist and reminds me of why I fell in love with quartz watches to start, and has started quartz renaissance in my watch collecting world. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. Maybe I'll get out of watches. Who knows? Don't believe it. But anyways, so that's kind of where I'm at, right? I wanted to talk a little bit about where I've been, where I think I am, and where I think I might go, and just mostly show, I think, some retrospection. Is that a thing? Introspection? Introretrospection? Sounds like looking inside your own behind. Anyways, I digress. A lot of people have said my head's up there, so hey, I guess that's what I'm doing. And just give some thanks, right, to some of the people who have made the channel possible in the early days, namely me being a giant idiot and selling the Sleesh Bowie, or folks like my buddy Jim, Sid, my buddy Mike in the modern era, although Jim and Sid are still great, and some of the makers who've been, helped the channel along, so to speak, and some of the makers who have, well, maybe not, but I'm not talking about them so much. And talk about my patrons who've been incredibly lovely and have made it possible for me to continue doing this channel without talking about how important it is that you use a VPN. And that brings me to today's sponsor. That's a joke. I'm not doing that. Although I get the emails. Oh my God, do I get the emails, right? All the brands that you've heard of and who you get those really awkward. And that's why it's important that your news be, yeah, they're emailing me. I'm saying no. But anyways, so I just figured I'd post up something real quick, give an update to folks, give a little bit of Thanksgiving, and mostly just let folks know that I'm alive. The battery is low. I'm continuing to charge as best I can, but most of all, I hope that you all are having a great time in your own journey. That if you celebrate Thanksgiving, that it was a lovely one spent with your family or your chosen family, both are valid, and that at the very least, if you didn't, that you had a lovely meal. Even not, you just had a nice Thursday. But anyways, thank you all so very much for being with me on this journey, right? Both in the past, for some of you in the long past, in the present, certainly, and perhaps into the future, whatever that may bring. But thank you all very much, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.